Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is not other than Mwesigwa once again on Inspire and Educate program. As we had earlier agreed that we shall be focusing on the technicalities in teaching, today we are basically focusing so much on the new curriculum. We are all aware that in 2020, the government rolled out a new revised curriculum, which is basically concentrating on lower level, or basically what you can call O level. But we must accept that even up to now, it has gone as far as A level is concerned. So far, we are having senior 5 who are on the amount of new curriculum, and for the case of the other O level, they now use it. But initially, this curriculum has undergone several stages. When a new curriculum is introduced, or whenever a new program is always rolled out, it has to undergo through many stages. So particularly it has been able to go through 4 stages, and the first stage was denial, where most of the people had denied the introduction of this new curriculum. You heard about the debate in the parliament, some members of parliament saying that this one cannot work in Uganda. But at the end of the day, people during this stage of denial, there was a lot of setbacks, or there were a lot of hindrances as far as this curriculum is concerned. So after this denial stage, there comes another stage, which is resistance. So some people, as they after realizing that the government was very much serious, they went further to resist this new curriculum. So the second stage was resistance, and many people resisted. The teachers resisted, the directors resisted, even the so-called policymakers tried to resist at the end of the day. But government was not ready to give up on this new curriculum. They continued with the journey of this new curriculum. So when the people, again, when the different educational stakeholders and basically different people in the government realized that the government was not willing to give up on this issue of new curriculum, they later accepted. Though people accepted, others had a lot of questions in their hands and a lot of questions in their hearts, but at the end of the day, they accepted the new curriculum. And as we talk now, we are in the fourth stage, which is commitment. So most of the people are quite committed on this new curriculum, and they are basically doing the needful as far as this new curriculum is concerned. So most people are asking themselves, or most of the people out there might be asking themselves, why was this new curriculum introduced? You know, in each and every aspect that we do, change must occur. And for the people who are in much CRE, or basically religious education, they say change is a factor of life, and it is a continuous process. So we must accept that what was happening in the 20th century need not necessarily take place in the 21st century. So the curriculum was rolled out, the curriculum was introduced basically to cater for the 21st century skills among the young children, or among the different young people who are going through education, particularly at secondary level. And the review basically started way back in 2009, actually 2018. That's where all the debates about the introduction of new curriculum were being held out, were being tabled to the different policymakers, different NCDC. But at the end of the day, in 2020, it was rolled out, and surely the government was not willing to go back. And as I had earlier said, that this new curriculum was introduced basically to foster, or what you can call, to introduce 21st century skills that everyone should be equipped with, that at the end of senior 4, at the end of senior 6, at the end of senior 1, at the end of senior 2, at least the learner should be able to move out of school with these 21st century skills that can be able to make him, or that can be able to make this child not become useless, but rather become useful in a particular society that this person might be living. So again, this new curriculum was introduced to help learner acquire what you can call skills. In the other old curriculum, people were basically acquiring knowledge, which was basically what I can call, it was basically knowledge based, and you could find people are basically much knowledge with academia, where they have much knowledge, but at the end of the day, they could not be having those skills that basically require a person to maybe to work. And that's why by that curriculum, unemployment was order of the day. Why? People could be willing to employ these people, but these people are devoid of the skills that maybe require maybe computer skills, or basically maybe the interpersonal skills. These people never had these skills because the curriculum which was there by then was not training learners to basically have such a skill. That's why the government saw it very prudent to have introduce a new curriculum that was basically trying to eliminate all the other problems or iniquities that the old curriculum had. So with the engagement of NCDC and trying to meet the Vision 2040 of Uganda, the new curriculum was rolled out to basically help the young people who are schooling, particularly at secondary level, to move out with these 21st skills that we can be able to meet the vision of 2040. And as we talk now, we are now looking forward to achieve this vision of 2040. But again, we should be able to remember that this one follows the Sustainable Development Goals, which were basically introduced to help the entire nation to basically look forward to achieve these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, where there is quality education as one of the SDG. So there was need to basically ensure that there is rigorous career guidance to these learners, depending on the professions that they are trying to pursue. At the end of the day, you could find someone doing, for example, divinity, doing history and doing Uganda, but when you ask him or you ask her, and the fellow could tell you he's going to become a doctor. But literally saying that if someone is doing CLE, then you don't go to the side of maybe medicine, but rather you go for other careers. So the old curriculum was not basically focusing on this. But at the start, by the time this learner joins in senior one with the new curriculum, someone should be guided in the career that is going to pursue at the end of the day, so that this learner can basically work upon him or herself in order to meet such goals in different careers that this person might be interested in. Then it was also to make learners or to help learners make informed choices. It was basically to help these people have good choice in terms of making. For example, when you are doing university, which program or which course do you like to do? At the end of the day, you come up with informed choice, having gone through a thorough consultation, having been oriented by different teachers. So a learner basically moves out, or a learner basically moves out of school, having made an informed choice that this learner will try to become this, will become a teacher, will become a doctor, will become a nurse, will become a religious leader at the end of the day, having gone through this curriculum. But again, this curriculum is also necessary to help the learner acquire knowledge and skills that will enhance their competitiveness in the global value chain. We are living in what we call a global village. I might have acquired education from Uganda, but that one does not necessarily mean that I should work in Uganda. So we are looking at how can this person who has acquired education from Uganda, how can he be or how can she be able to compete globally elsewhere in Uganda? Because we are not centering basically to work here in Uganda, but also work at a global level. In other words, we can another country where we go to, we can basically be able to work there without registering any problem as far as this academia is concerned. So education system in Uganda is quite prolonged, and actually it is in Uganda where most people spend much time in schools than any other country. For example, we have pre-primary education. This is basically a nursery, maybe from baby up to top. And these days, this is where most of the parents cherish to have their children go to these schools and basically speak English. But again, after graduating from this pre-primary, now a learner goes through the primary level. From P1 up to P7. These are 7 years. Remember that the parents are paying fees, the parents are doing each and everything to make sure that this child acquires education. And that's why ANELA is there, that as far as these 7 years are concerned, a learner can either graduate and go to senior one, or a learner can fail and either repeat P7, or basically forego education and go for other things. So you realize that most of the time is spent in schools than basically putting this time into useful activities that people can participate in. Let's also look at secondary, that as this learner finishes P7, then he graduates and goes to secondary school. Secondary school basically takes 6 years. You move on from primary, now you go to secondary. Of course, secondary is split into two. We have O level and then A level. So O level takes 4 years, and then A level takes basically 2 years. So as this learner graduates from primary to secondary in those 6 years, either chances are very that this learner will pass and go to university, or this learner might again fail and go back maybe to A level, or basically go to other institutions of higher learning. But you find that most of the time we are spending a lot of time in these secondary schools, and at the end of the day, this learner moves out of school but cannot be able to get a job. So that's why our curriculum comes on board, basically to solve all these problems. That at the end of the day, having spent much time of these children in schools, they can be able to move out with certain skills, they can be able to move out with certain values, they can be able to move out at least with tangible work that the person can indulge in, rather than waiting for an employer to give him a job. So why do we introduce new curriculum? Why are we bothered with this new curriculum? Or what was wrong with old curriculum? One, it was better to address the outdated content. You realize that in the old curriculum, some information was quite outdated. The 21st century skills, or the 21st century which we are in, does not surely correlate with the 20th century or 19th century. So you find in subjects, for example, like history, in subjects, for example, like geography, you find you are teaching content which was quite outdated. So in order to remove all that, there was a need surely to introduce a new curriculum that now could basically bring updated content that basically suits in the 21st century skills. There was a need also for job market needs. You know that most of the employers are interested in the 21st century skills. They're interested in the values. They're not interested in how you performed, whether you got a first class, whether you got an A, or whether you got a first grade, whether you got 20 points. No, they are interested basically in those skills, interpersonal skills, that can you be able surely to correlate very well in the environment which you are in. You find, for example, someone has finished a degree but doesn't lack those interpersonal skills that can help him or her survive. But with this new curriculum, as this child steps into secondary school, then at the end of the day, should be able to fit in, or should be able to do in, or to do should be able to fit in with the society and be able to meet job markets. Then there was issues of poor learner outcomes, that these objectives which learners were going through could end up not helping them. So with the need to help these learners have good outcomes at the end of the day, there was need for a new curriculum. Then the other new curriculum was basically teacher-centered, where a teacher was taken as a fountain of knowledge and learners were taken as empty tins. But these days you must accept that no one is an empty tin, and all of us basically are at the same level. And that's why this new curriculum is learner-centered, where a learner it is a central when it comes to learning, but not the other old curriculum where a teacher was a fountain of knowledge. And that's why you could find teachers actually they are taken as expatriates in teaching. But with this new curriculum, no, a learner is at the center of learning. A teacher is also a learner in class. The teacher, what he does is just facilitate learning, but does not become the sole provider of knowledge in each and every aspect. Then we need to develop holistic learners who are well informed in each and every aspect, but also need for us to basically introduce learners who are critical thinkers and be able to compete favorably in this 21st century. So the other old curriculum was basically too academic. It had what we call limited practical skills. You could, for example, have scientists who could not even fix a bulb at the end of the day. And these are people who have bachelors. So these are people who have finished A-level and have done physics, but at the end of the day cannot be able to fix a bulb. So at the end of the day, there was limited practical skills. Then it was also teacher-centered. A teacher was a fountain of knowledge. It was actually what we call the central teaching. The teacher goes in front and starts dictating each and everything. There was an issue of overloaded content. The content was overloaded. But again, it could end up producing learners who are what we call rote learning or cramming. Learners could end up cramming the work, could end up cramming the notes, and end up passing very well. But when surely they cannot be able to do or to implement what they learned in class. But also, it was placed on clustering learners. For example, learners were being clustered as either fast learners, as either maybe slow learners, or basically the learners who have passed, learners who have failed, which is not basically in this new curriculum. Then it was more of theory, that at the end of the day, a learner could basically could study what you call molecular concept in chemistry, but without going to a laboratory. So with this new curriculum, we basically let learning be by doing, according to Johnny Dewey, who said that let learning be by doing. So at the end of the day, as these learners are learning, they should be able to do. Actually, some scholars say that if a learner learn as he does, or if a learner is doing, then he understands more than basically teachers providing each and everything. Now, people might ask themselves, what could have surely changed in the new curriculum? The mode of teaching changed, the way we sit in the class changed, the way we assess learners changed, the way we mark learners changed. There are different aspects that surely have been able to change in this new curriculum that basically were not happening in the old curriculum. So strictly we need to move very, very fast, ladies and gentlemen, and see basically why there is need for this new curriculum. So this new curriculum, I request all teachers outside there, I request all the facilitators, the educationists, the directors, the policymakers to really accept that we must accept this change and be able to move on. Because if you try to resist, if you try to lag behind, then the world will leave you, because we must surely go on with this new curriculum and just accept the technicalities in it and then be able to move on. So dear teachers, some of you might be worried with this new curriculum, but I know with government has injected a lot of money in training teachers, in training different policymakers, but we are still having that challenge where, for example, some teachers don't know what to do when it comes to teaching. So this is how the Inspire and Educate program has come to help you. We are providing different mentorship programs. We are trying to provide different training programs to the teachers outside there who might be crumbling, who might be worried, who might be challenged with technicalities of new curriculum. We are a solution for you. So when it comes to assessment now, after teacher teaching, of course, it does not necessarily mean how do you know that learning has taken place? Because we are not waiting for the mid-term, we are not waiting for the end term or end of term, we are not waiting for UNEB. We assess on daily basis. Now, as a teacher is teaching, I said that a teacher becomes a facilitator of learning, whereas a learner becomes central, or a learner is basically at center of teaching. Now, there is what we call triangulation. So, a teacher does what you call a teacher does what you call DIAs, and then learners do what you call COPs. A teacher does what you call COPs, and the learner DIAs. So what is DIA? A learner discovers, a learner explains, a learner presents, and the learner asks. Whereas a teacher converses, a teacher observes, and then a teacher gives feedback. So the major role of a teacher, ladies and gentlemen, is basically to facilitate learning. Your role is to observe, your role is to see, and your role is basically to guide learning and be able to provide feedback to learners. And it is this is where, in instance, for example, learning is going on. Let us be able to try our level best to appreciate learners. We said that in this new curriculum, no one is an empty tin. Whatever an answer a learner gives, try to appreciate, try to give a credit to this learner, because next time he will be able to make a thorough research and be able to come up with correct answers. But some teachers might be maybe diminishing learners, or might be demotivating learners by basically stopping them, or maybe by saying your answer is wrong. This is not correct. Every learner that learner gives in this new curriculum is correct, so long as these learners are participating in the class, what you can call the classroom activities. So as you are teaching, as you are assessing in the classes, basically what you can call the class activities, a learner accord him the necessary respect and be able to try to ask what you call questions which are quite provoking questions that can help, that can trigger the minds of learners. Don't bring the straight answers. That's why we are moving away from the framework and basically try to produce what you call the critical thinkers. How do you introduce critical thinkers? By basically asking them what can call the provoking questions that can basically make this learner trigger their mind and be able to respond. So as I said, a teacher becomes a facilitator, whereas the learner is at central of teaching. Now, people are asking themselves, how do we assess in a new curriculum? Assessment takes place every day. We are not saying that assessment, the usual assessment which we had, is not on track. It is on track. We are having two types of assessment. Actually, there are four, but broadly there are two. We are having assessment of learning, and then we are having assessment as learning, then we are having assessment for learning, and then we are having assessment as learning. But broadly speaking, we are having formative assessment and then summative assessment. So we as teachers, we basically supposed to carry out what we call formative assessment. That those at the end of every chapter, at the end of every topic, you are supposed to assess learners and find out if truly learners understood what was captured in that topic. That's what we call an activity of integration. So we give an activity of integration at the end of every chapter. And why do we give this activity of integration? It is basically to assess, to ascertain if learning took place. And this is where teachers have a chance of again reteaching, what you can call redo of teaching the topics in case these learners didn't understand the topic which you taught. You are not supposed to proceed teaching another topic minus making sure that every learner understands this topic. How do you do that? By basically carrying out formative assessment. This is where, for example, learners sit down and do a test. A formative assessment, or basically what we call activities of integration, are done individually, not groups. The classroom activities can be done in groups, but this one is done individually. A learner sits on his table, a learner sits on her table, and writes that activity of integration individually without help of anyone. That's why you can easily ascertain that Davis understood or did not understand, and then be able to go back and then be able to make correction so that Davis can understand whatever was captured in that topic. And you must be aware that UNEB gave schools that guarantee of these formative assessments are basically taking the 20 marks. And now, how comes to summative assessment? This is when a learner basically finishes the cycle and be able to do that exam, which most people call UNEP. So, summative assessment is done at the end of every cycle. That is senior 4 and senior 6, where learners are subject to national exams, what you can call the UCE and USE exams. UNEB exams are done and are called summative assessment. Why? Because they are meant to determine the fate of a learner. Either the learner should be promoted to another level, or the learner should be able to repeat, or the learner should go to other areas. So we are having formative assessment, that's the daily routine, and then summative assessment, which is done at the end of every cycle, basically at the end of senior 4 and then at the end of senior 6. So again, that 20 marks encompasses what we call projects. Now, some people are worried of projects. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing should confuse you. Projects are very simple. We have what we call simple routine, simple non-routine. These are projects that learners are supposed to do at the end of every term. And some schools actually, the enable guidance say that let schools be able to do these projects at least 2 projects in every term. So by the time this learner goes to senior 2, maybe should have done maybe 12 subjects if he's doing 12 subjects. Then by the time this learner goes to senior 4, should have done what we call integrated projects, which are basically trying to bring different subjects together and then be able to carry out integrated projects, which are basically trying to borrow knowledge from different subjects that teachers have been able to teach. So I'm saying that these project marks and then formative assessments, what you call activities of integration, basically takes 20 marks, and then basically what you call summative assessment, or what you can call UNEB, basically gives a guarantee of 80 marks, and the learner is basically scored out of 100 marks. So ladies and gentlemen, that's why I encourage you that you should be able to interest yourselves in this new curriculum and be able to understand its technicalities. Once you appreciate it, you will be able to do this work very well. But the moment you are trying to resist, then you will always cast this new curriculum. Yet it is the way to go, and we cannot retaliate back, but rather we must accept the change and be able to move with what the government has been able to provide as far as the new curriculum is concerned. Otherwise, for more of this, please subscribe and be able maybe to invite us and come to facilitate as far as new curriculum is concerned. Otherwise, I beg to submit, and I remain Mwesigwa Davis, the co-founder of Inspire and Educate program. May God bless you. Thank you.